Hi, thanks for coming. I'm a cognitive scientist, and I study how learning and memory and attention all come together to inform our decisions, how we make decisions, specifically with respect to food choices and pro-environmental behaviors. I grew up on a farm, kind of a farm, with a mom who was a farmer. And when I think of farming, I think of happy cows, these sort of bucolic images, happy cows eating grass, and cute pigs walling around in the dirt. Does anybody know what this map represents? Any guesses? Yeah. Yeah, it's the US visualized by the distance to the nearest McDonald's. We actually spend, and this is just McDonald's, I mean, how many others are there? We spend 53% of our food dollars dining outside the home. And when McDonald's is the #1 buyer of beef and potatoes in this country, our food system has to make accommodations. And this is what those accommodations really look like. This is a feedlot up in Northern California with up to 100,000 head of cattle. Nothing like the images that I grew up with on the farm. Our food system is unsustainable and completely toxic in a lot of different ways. Probably the most obvious that you can see on a regular basis is how toxic our food system is for our bodies. You can see here in the light blue states, those are states in which obesity rates were less than 10%. A few states had darker blue, 10 to 14%. This is 1985. That pattern began shifting fairly rapidly. That darker blue is taking over. And we have a new color with 15 to 19% obesity rates. Just a few years later, we had to add another new color for 20% obesity rates, greater than 20%. Again, you can see that color is really taking over. In 2001, this is greater than 25%. Greater than 30%. Colorado is still hanging in there. I got my PhD in Colorado. Everyone there is very fit. But they lost out in 2010, and this is now what our country looks like. Obesity rates in every state are greater than 20%. And everybody likes to pick on Americans, but we're not the only ones whose waist sizes are increasing. You see headlines like this popping up all over the world. And childhood obesity is becoming an especially alarming problem. 70% of all children who are obese grow up to be adults who are obese. We form a lot of our food preferences and early food choices during childhood. They stick with us. People say to me, Erica, everyone's just sitting around on their computers, poking their friends on Facebook, and that's why we're all getting overweight. But what you can see here is that we're not getting enough exercise. It's true, only 20% of Americans are getting the recommended levels. But that has remained fairly stable across the last 25 years. So a lack of exercise cannot fully account for the increases in weight that we see. So where are those extra pounds coming from? This is the recommended USDA guidelines for what we should be consuming on a daily basis. We should be getting about 5% of our daily calories from added fats and sugars. And this is the average reported diet of a US 10-year-old. What you can see here is they get about 46% of their calories from added fats and sugars. In fact, 4 of the 6 leading causes of death in this country are diet-related: heart disease, cancers, stroke, and diabetes. Now, you might think to yourself, I'm not overweight, so this doesn't really affect me. The fact of the matter is obesity affects everyone. Obesity-related diseases and chronic health care problems, chronic health costs associated with obesity account for about 75% of all US health care costs. Heart disease, stroke, and diabetes alone are costing this country about $600 billion. And I'm just going to put this big number into perspective. California cut $1.4 billion from higher education last year. We spend in this state $41 billion a year fighting obesity-related diseases. Just think of all of the things we could be doing with that $41 billion, like preventable education, preventable creative things, some of the things people have discussed here. In addition to our bodies, agriculture uses a lot of water. For example, agriculture in this country uses about 70% of all of the water that's drawn. And it takes a lot of water to produce some foods. over others. So for example, meat and dairy, especially beef, takes much more water. This is gallons of irrigation water to produce just a kilogram of these foods. Takes much more water than fruits and vegetables. And the type of agricultural system that we've perfected to feed all of the people who are on this planet is creating toxic water supply. 97% of all US rivers and streams test positive for agricultural pesticides, according to a 2006 US Geological Survey. So we're drinking those pesticides, and then we're eating them. 92% of edible fish, mollusks, and freshwater aquatic life also test positive. We are indirectly exposed to these chemicals, but farm workers who are out in the fields have higher rates of prostate cancer and higher rates of breast cancer, directly attributed to occupational chemicals that they're exposed to. In addition to water, energy is a huge concern, and some foods take much more energy to produce than others. For example, to raise a 1,250-pound steer, it takes 283 gallons of oil. Shipping the calf to the feedlot, that feed that's shipped in and grown, the wonderful petroleum-based fertilizers and pesticides and hormones that we use, and then shipping that food to the market. And to produce just 1 calorie of Diet Coca-Cola, it takes 2,200 calories of energy. Not a very efficient process. And we're definitely using more than our fair share of oil in this country. You can see here almost twice that of other developed countries and much more than less developed countries. We are also using our land in sort of inefficient ways. For example, to just grow 4 crops, corn, soybeans, hay, and wheat, we use 80% of all of the land that's farmed in the country. And most of these cash crops that we subsidize with our tax dollars, by the way, are used to make kind of unhealthy processed foods and also to raise meat and dairy. And that's why a salad costs more than a Big Mac. So what you can see on your left is how our government spends our food subsidies. So between 1995 and 2005, about 74% of the tax dollars that were spent on food subsidies went to fund meat and dairy. Less than 1%, 0.37%, went to fund fruits and vegetables. Over here, you can see what the government tells us we should eat. So what they spend our money on and what they tell us we should eat. Much less meat and dairy, much more fruits and vegetables and grains. Something is clearly not right here. So what I'm here today to talk about are some alternative models. It should be pretty obvious that we need a different food system, that it's not working for us, it's costing us a fortune, it's polluting our water, our air, our soil, and our bodies. And so a lot of the things that you've heard in the past, like small changes can make really big effects, have really big effects, and that's true. So some of the things you could do, buy organic, you probably heard that in the past. You're not contributing to the pesticide use. You're typically supporting more diverse croplands and less monocultures. You can eat less meat and dairy. They're particularly water intensive, energy intensive, land intensive. You can also buy local and seasoned produce. That would be a great start. Here in California, we produce 60% of the entire country's fruits, vegetables, and nuts. So it's pretty easy to eat seasonal, local produce here. You could even get involved in a community-supported agriculture program, like these boxes here. Sometimes you can sign up for one of these programs, 20, 30 bucks, and they'll deliver the food right to your door. You don't even have to go to the grocery store. You're supporting local economies, local farmers, and oftentimes much more sustainable farming practices. You could also start gardening. I actually spent a few $1,000s of my own money to start a community garden on my campus a few years ago, and we built some raised beds. We're growing tons of food, broccoli, lettuce, cantaloupe, watermelon. We even built one of these vertical walls that we're installing in elementary schools all across Los Angeles to teach kids about healthy eating. The students are eating their fruits and vegetables. They're really enjoying it. They compost, they harvest their own seeds. They're learning traditional farming techniques. But here in Los Angeles, we have some land issues. Where are these gardens going to grow? We have some antiquated laws that prevent us from using some of the space much more wisely than we could be. This is my friend Ron Finley. He planted a garden in the parkway, that's what this is called, in the parkway in front of his house. He feeds his neighbors, his whole entire street, he feeds himself, but you can grow trees and shrubs and grass in that parkway, but without paying up to $400 for an agricultural permit, you're not allowed to grow food. He has been fighting this system successfully, actually. I just ran into him last night and picked some spinach from his garden. It's growing really well, but we need to create change. I would encourage you to use this space if you have it. We really need to be talking to our policymakers to create the changes that we need. And you might even land yourself a new career. I don't know how many of you guys are happy with your current jobs, but thanks to the Food and Flowers Freedom Act that was passed in 2010, it's now legal for backyard gardeners to sell their produce to restaurants and farmers markets and even to their neighbors. So creating a local economy of sustainable, healthy foods, it's a really fabulous move, one that San Francisco recently just mimicked as a result of not wanting to be behind Los Angeles in something. Yeah, it was really fun. You could also join in the gleaning movement. This is getting more and more popular. Food Forward is a local nonprofit that picks food from local neighborhood trees. So you can call up Food Forward and they'll come if you have a tree or some trees in your neighborhood. And they organize volunteers to pick, and then they donate the food to local hungry LA residents, to food shelters, food distribution centers. Or you can contribute a map to Fallen Fruit. Fallen Fruit's not a nonprofit, but they're a website dedicated to helping gleaners find food in their neighborhoods. I made a map of Venice. I pick figs, peaches, plums, pluots, avocados, lemons, loquats. I'm a farmer. I don't have any land. I live in an apartment in Venice, and I eat amazingly well. You could also start a food club. These are popping up all over Los Angeles. The Venice Harvest Exchange is one that my friends and I started. It modeled after the underground farmers market in San Francisco. Local backyard gardeners and food producers come together at our monthly meetings, and we trade and sell food. It's prohibitively expensive for some food producers to rent a commercial kitchen space in order to make their food legally available to consumers. And so these food clubs popping up, like I said, all over are allowing that to happen. These are some pictures of our Venice Harvest Exchange events. My friend who's starting a flourless chocolate cake business. We have musicians, artists, performers, all kinds of things. Local mushrooms, I'm a forager. Some of those gleaned fruits. We have a lot of food waste in this country too. It seems like we have an abundance given the fact that our waste sizes are increasing at alarming rates. But every year in the United States, we throw away 96 billion pounds of food. That's a huge number. It's 263 million pounds a day. That's still a huge number. But what that translates into is 3,000 pounds of food per second gets trashed. Food that took energy, water, human labor, all kinds of resources gets trashed. And so if you want to get really radical, you could join the freegan movement. I would say that 90% of my diet is foraged from either my garden or from the forest or from the dumpster. You get a plethora of fruits and vegetables. My friends and I forage on a regular basis. We take the food. I live in Venice. We take it over to the Venice boardwalk and feed hungry people. They're very excited about it. I have lots of students who are now foraging. Clearly, this food wasn't safe for human consumption, so it had to be tossed in the trash. You get one moldy strawberry, for example, and this entire pack of organic strawberries, and the whole thing gets trashed because one moldy strawberry means that pack doesn't weigh a pound anymore. Even though it's legally allowed for grocery stores to donate that food to nonprofits, they're just not always doing it. Albertsons has been a leader in that, but most of the other grocery stores, including Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, don't donate their food or donate very little. Some of them do donate some food. I'm actually taking a sabbatical this fall to write a book about reconnecting with the land, helping to mitigate some of the problems that we have created in our food system. Foraging, following the mushrooms, actually all across the entire Pacific, well, the entire western part of the country. But you don't have to be a dumpster diver. You don't have to be a freegan. You don't even have to go plant a garden in order to change our food system. We created this system, so we have the power to change it. Every time you spend $1, you're voting for what you want the world to look like. So you should just ask yourself, when you spend your money, what do I believe in? What do I want the world to look like? Thanks.